The man unbuttoned the little girl's pants and then pressed his mouth to hers. A passing woman was so shocked that she collapsed to the ground. She thought she had encountered a pervert and quickly fled in terror. The man was soon taken to the police station and was later convicted of rape and murder. However, what people didn't know was that the little girl accidentally slipped on the ice and got hurt. No one noticed that the man was trying his best to save her. No one cared that he had the intelligence of a 6-year-old. This is a true century-old injustice, but it was turned into the most heartwarming blockbuster in South Korea. The man's name is Lee Longjeo. Although his IQ is only that of a 6-year-old, his heart is kinder than anyone else's. Longjeo spends every day singing and dancing with his daughter in front of the store. They sing the Sailor Moon song together with the TV. His daughter really wants a Sailor Moon backpack. Longjeo tells his daughter, "I can buy it tomorrow when I get paid." Just as his daughter is overjoyed, the only backpack in the display window is taken by someone else. Seeing that someone else had bought it, Longjeo quickly stepped forward and said that the backpack belonged to his daughter. They came to see it every day, sometimes even twice a day. Due to his mental age being only 6, he didn't know how to express himself. Longjeo reached out to touch the little girl's face to show friendliness, but the girl's father mistook it for harassment and slapped him several times. Fortunately, the store clerk quickly intervened, preventing Longjeo from getting hurt. Seeing her father being beaten, Yisheng felt very uncomfortable. She told her father that it didn't matter if she didn't have a school bag. However, Longjeo wanted to give the school bag as a gift for her new semester. Soon, the father and daughter fell asleep. The next day, when Longjeo went to work, his daughter thoughtfully handed him a water bottle and reminded him not to drink tap water, but to drink hot water. She also told him to have lunch and not just eat dry bread. Longjeo blew on his daughter's cold little hands and then ran off. Watching her father leave, the daughter didn't rush home, as if she was waiting for something.
둘, 셋.
Longjeo turned around, and they made funny faces at each other. This was a unique bond between father and daughter. Longjeo worked as a parking attendant at a mall. At noon, he started munching on some dry bread. He took out his freshly earned salary and counted it over and over. Finally, he had enough money to buy a backpack for his daughter. At this moment, the little girl who bought the backpack yesterday came over. She saw that other places were also selling the same backpack and decided to take Longjeo to check it out. The weather was extremely cold at -18 degrees, and the small puddles on the road had turned to ice. Longjeo accidentally slipped and fell to the ground. Before he could get up, he heard the little girl's voice. When he approached, he saw the little girl lying motionless on the ground, with the back of her head soaked in blood. As Longjeo tried to save her, a woman saw him and fled in panic to call the police. Longjeo was then taken to the police station. He had no idea what had happened, only that his daughter would be scared alone at home, and he needed to return. However, he was met with a brutal beating from the police. The daughter waited until nightfall, but her father never came. The next day, it was time for school. She looked at a photo of them together, still unsure of her father's whereabouts. She stepped on a small table to take down her old backpack from the wall and packed her books into it. Despite the heavy rain, the usually quiet street was unusually lively. The media speculated about Longjeo's motive for murder. Longjeo was taken to the scene to reenact the crime. No one paid attention to his constant mention of blood circulation. Everyone saw him as a criminal who molested a little girl. Longjeo wanted to go home to see his daughter. The police tricked him, saying he just needed to unzip his pants. Innocent Longjeo didn't understand and complied. Someone in the crowd couldn't stand it and pulled off Longjeo's mask. His daughter, passing by on her way to school, saw this and shouted, "Dad." Longjeo heard her voice. Yisheng tried to run to Longjeo through the crowd, but was stopped by the police. Longjeo was then forcibly taken away, still not understanding what was happening or why he couldn't go home despite complying. Not long after, Longjeo was sent to prison. When the chief heard about his crime, he picked up the phone and gave him a verbal lashing. Then, Longjeo was taken to a cell where 5 other inmates were already present. They were in for robbery, fraud, adultery, intimidation, and gang-related activities. The gang leader asked him to sing a song, but Longjeo started introducing himself instead. When asked why he was there, his answer was completely irrelevant. They had to snatch his verdict paper to find out. Upon seeing that he was in for luring and raping a minor, they covered him with a blanket and started beating him up. Although they were criminals too, they all shared a common hatred for such acts. After getting tired of beating him, they began to criticize him. When he heard about the death sentence, the gang leader's raised hand paused. Every time they had outdoor time, Longjeo was always shunned by. One day, he saw someone sharpening a toothbrush. That person noticed him and signaled for him to be quiet. A sharpened toothbrush becomes a handy weapon, and their target was the gang leader. Kind-hearted Longjeo sensed something was wrong. As they charged with the weapon, Longjeo quickly ran over. The gang leader was knocked to the ground, but the toothbrush stabbed into Longjeo instead. Longjeo's good deed saved the gang leader's life. Back in the room, his treatment immediately improved. Not only did someone make his bed for him, but the gang leader also said he could grant him one wish. It turns out that the gang leader here is a jack of all trades. He usually uses his soccer skills to place requests inside the ball. During the windbreak, he deliberately throws it over the wall. When the people outside throw it back, it has already been swapped. They can get anything they want. Unexpectedly, Longjeo just wants to see his daughter. Although bringing a living person inside is very difficult, the gang leader is not someone who likes to owe favors. Soon, the gang leader organized a choir performance. Among the performers were a few children, and Yisheng was mixed in with them. Amid the chaos, they took Yisheng away. She was then placed in a large cardboard box. After successfully passing through multiple checkpoints, the box was finally brought into the cell. Yisheng climbed out of the box and saw her father.
Papa!
Long Jiu hurriedly crawled towards his daughter. She cried and hit him, asking why he disappeared without a word. Long Jiu could only keep apologizing. They hugged and cried, expressing how much they missed each other. A fellow inmate couldn't take it anymore. If they were discovered, not only would the special rescue be cancelled, but they would also get an additional 2 years in prison. The inmate decided to turn himself in. Despite everyone's efforts to cover his mouth, his shouting attracted the guards. Yisheng cleverly hid under the door. Just as the man was about to speak, Yisheng stepped forward and grabbed his hand. Seeing Yisheng's pleading eyes, the man immediately softened. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief.
자, 먹어 이 자식아. 바빠주겠구만.
As soon as the guard left, Yisheng once again jumped into Long Jiu's arms. This time, Yisheng reminded her father to be quiet. Seeing such a clever and lively little girl, everyone started to ask questions with concern. An elderly person even thoughtfully handed her a glass of milk. When Yisheng asked her father where they were, Long Jiu bluntly replied that they were in prison, and that everyone there was a bad person except for him. The situation became quite awkward, but fortunately, everyone knew about Long Jiu's circumstances and didn't mind. The originally scheduled 2-hour visit was unexpectedly interrupted when a pastor suddenly fainted. The choir had to end their performance early and hurriedly left in a car. Yisheng missed the car and was forced to stay in the prison. Although she had to eat prison food with her father, as long as they were together, it felt like a feast. However, it was tough for their cellmates. They had to figure out how to get Yisheng out and hide her during inspections. Despite the daily tension and excitement, Yisheng's presence brought a lot of joy to the cold prison. Everyone treated her like their own daughter, singing and dancing with her. Even the room's lights were made into star and moon shapes. When the moon and stars shone on the bed, the room was filled with a fairy tale warmth. Yisheng said, "It's all my fault for insisting on the pretty girl backpack, which got Dad locked up here." Long Jiu comforted her, saying, "We'll buy it for you once Dad is out."
알았어.
판사 아저씨한테 또박또박 얘기 잘해, 아빠.
또박또박.
아빠는 나쁜 사람 아니라고.
아빠 나쁜 사람 아니야.
As expected, Yisheng was found hidden in the cell. The chief was furious and ordered his men to send Yisheng out immediately. It was pouring rain outside, and Long Jiu pleaded with the chief to wait until the rain stopped, fearing Yisheng might catch a cold. Hearing this, the chief became even more enraged. "You killed someone else's daughter, and you still want to see your own?" He then proceeded to beat him up and had him tied up and locked in a small dark room. At this moment, Long Jiu is most worried about his daughter being scared of the thunder and lightning. Meanwhile, Yisheng was sent to an orphanage, where she cried every day. Because of this incident, all the prisoners in the prison were punished. One prisoner somehow got hold of a barrel of gasoline and set the room on fire. It turns out he hadn't seen his family in over 10 years. When he heard that a little girl had been hiding in the prison for a long time, he hoped the man became more and more agitated, and the fire grew larger. Fearing a major incident, the warden quickly ordered all the prisoners to gather in the yard. He stayed behind to confront the criminal while everyone else was running out. Long Jiu found the unconscious chief inside the room. He used his body to break through the barricade at the door and rushed into the fire without hesitation. When the chief woke up from his coma, the doctor told him that it was thanks to Long Jiu. Otherwise, he might have already become a charred corpse. Looking at Long Jiu, who was snoring with multiple burns, the chief began to doubt how such a kind person could be a kidnapper. On this day, Yixiang was late for school. When the teacher asked her what happened, she requested the teacher to visit her home. She then led the teacher to the entrance. Upon meeting, the teacher discovered that Long Jiu was intellectually disabled. Although they couldn't communicate well, the father and daughter were very happy talking to each other. Visiting time ended quickly. The guard cut off their call. Seeing his daughter couldn't hear him, Long Jiu broke free and rushed to the switch. He told his daughter he would be back soon and reminded her to eat on time and not to starve herself. The chief, witnessing their sincere bond, couldn't believe Long Jiu could commit a crime. From then on, he began to secretly observe Long Jiu. While others enjoyed the sun during breaks, Long Jiu alone hid in a dark corner, repeatedly writing his daughter's name on the ground. Since their last meeting, Yisheng stopped eating and drinking, and the section chief rushed to the hospital after hearing the news, only to be met with Yisheng's pleading face.
같이 잡아가시면 안 돼요?
The section chief couldn't bear to watch any longer and turned away. He then used his position to send a big cardboard box to cell number 7. The inmates guessed it was a big cake, but Long Jiu kept murmuring his daughter's name. Then, Yisheng actually crawled out of the box. The prison guard told them it was all arranged by the chief. To thank the chief for arranging their meeting, Long Jiu brought him his favorite cookies. The chief still had a cold expression, but as Long Jiu was leaving, he asked, "Why did you kill the little girl?" Long Jiu, who isn't very smart, didn't know how to explain. Seeing that he couldn't get an answer from Long Jio, the chief decided to check with the police himself. It turned out that the person killed was the chief's daughter. The time police department was in chaos, and they were given a week to solve the case. They quickly wrapped it up. Seeing Long Jio's smooth testimony, the section chief became even more convinced that Long Jio was wrongfully accused. Next, the section chief approached the director, asking to reopen Long Jio's case. However, the director, still grieving his son's death, insisted that someone must pay for his daughter's life, regardless of Long Jio's guilt. Since Isheng arrived at the prison, the illiterate gang leader started reading books under everyone's supervision. Isheng brought a classmate's phone into the prison, allowing an inmate to successfully contact his family. The inmates increasingly believed that Long was wrongfully accused, so they began to deduce the situation. So it turned out that the backpack caused the back of her head to hit the ground when she fell, leading to severe brain hemorrhage and death. As for why her pants were removed, it was because Long Jio learned in a first aid class that loosening pants helps blood circulation. After chest compressions, artificial respiration is performed. After understanding the sequence of events, they decided to rewrite Long Jio's testimony. To help him memorize it, they wrote a full page for him. From then on, Long Jio practiced daily, whether running during breaks, using the restroom, hanging clothes, or resting at night. After some time, they even held a mock trial. With everyone's persistent help, Long Jio finally managed to recount the events smoothly. One day, the prison guard suddenly informed him of a lawyer's visit. The lawyer wanted Long Jio to plead guilty, or else his daughter might be in danger. However, Long Jio couldn't understand the threat in his words. In the end, the lawyer left in frustration. When taking Long Jio to court, the chief personally unlocked his handcuffs, encouraging him to stay strong for Isheng. He assured him that as long as he could explain what happened, he could go home. Before the trial, Long Jio was practicing by reading a paper. However, during the trial, he became dazed and avoided eye contact. When asked if he had killed the little girl, his breathing became rapid, and he confessed to all the crimes. This caused an uproar among the audience. Long Jio then turned to look at his daughter in the audience. The section chief suggested a recess, believing his mental state was abnormal. However, the judge rejected it. Long Jio kept apologizing repeatedly, admitting that he was responsible for everything. He just hoped everyone could help his daughter, Isheng. In the end, he was sentenced to death. The lawyer had told him that only his death could save his daughter. Just before the trial, the chief took him into a small room, beat him up, and then viciously warned him that if he didn't confess, his daughter would meet the same fate as the chief's daughter. To ensure his daughter's safety, Long Jio had no choice but to confess to everything. Later, the chief adopted Isung. Whenever he had time, he would arrange for them to meet. Every time Long Jio left, Isung would still count. Long Jio still turns around and makes funny faces. They still maintain their unique understanding. Isheng not only writes letters to Long Jio, but also remembers the boss in the cell. Clever Isheng scores full marks in every exam, making Long Jio very happy each time. They thought this life could go on forever. On this day, the section chief suddenly received some unfortunate news. Long Jio's execution was scheduled for December 23rd, which also happened to be Isheng's birthday. While everyone was busy preparing for Christmas festivities, Long Jio was writing his daughter's name on the window. There were many inmates in the prison with crimes far more severe than Long Jio's, yet he was to be executed so soon. It was clearly a deliberate arrangement by the director. They couldn't bear to see the kind-hearted Long Jio killed, so they began to plan a prison break. While working, they secretly gathered materials and designed a huge balloon. During the Christmas celebration performance, the daughter sneaked into the group again. As the performance was about to end, each child held someone's hand and walked towards the playground. Surrounded by everyone, Long Jio and his daughter were placed in the basket. After untying the rope, the balloon soared into the sky. The 4 inmates cheered loudly, and even the warden smiled. When the guards realized what was happening, the prisoners rushed forward to block them. On the playground, guards and prisoners started fighting. Just when they thought Long Jio and his daughter could escape to freedom, the balloon's rope unfortunately got caught on the barbed wire. In the end, the escape plan failed. On the day of the execution, it happened to be Yisheng's birthday. Long Jio fed his daughter spoonfuls of food. The uncles in the cell had all prepared birthday gifts for Yisheng. Long Jio's gift to his daughter was a big box containing the magical girl backpack Yisheng had always wanted. Yisheng knelt down and gave her father a deep bow, thanking him for bringing her into this world. At the boss's reminder, Long Jio also knelt down to return the gesture, thanking her for being his daughter. The two embraced each other emotionally. Everyone held back their tears. The inmates wrote their names and blessings on Long Jio's back. The warden tore up the prepared testimony. As he was leaving, Long Jio repeatedly said goodbye to his fellow inmates and thanked them 3 times.
고마워요. 고마워요. 예. 네. 고마워요.
He then held his daughter's hand and walked out of the cell. The empty corridor seemed endless, but his life was nearing its end. Seeing the blessings from his fellow inmates on his back, the chief lowered his head in sorrow. At the iron gate of separation, Long Jio told his daughter to take good care of herself. The daughter thought her father was just moving to another cell and assured him not to worry, promising to visit him. The guard opened the iron gate, and Long Jio could no longer hold back his tears. He hugged his daughter tightly, unwilling to let go. Finally, he held back his tears and wished his daughter a Merry Christmas. The section chief patted Long Jio on the shoulder and then took his daughter's hand from him. The daughter waved goodbye to her father. At the corner, they made funny faces at each other again. As Long Jio walked past the corner and saw the two beams of light at the end of the hallway, he realized he could never go back. He then collapsed to the ground with a thud. Isheng still thinks about their every moment of tacit understanding.
둘, 셋.
However, this time, he didn't see his father. Isheng counted again, still no sign of his dad. It was then he realized he might never see his father again.
아빠! 아빠!
Lying on the ground, Long Jio heard his daughter's voice. He quickly got up and ran towards her, hugging her through the iron bars and breaking down in tears. At that moment, he realized that something more terrifying than death was not being able to watch Isheng grow up. Long Jio kept bowing and apologizing to everyone, repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry and help me." Those words seemed like a deep cry from his soul. He couldn't die, he couldn't leave Isheng. The inmates listened to Long Jio's cries in silence. In the blink of an eye, Isung has grown into a young woman. She is now an excellent lawyer. She obtained the case files of her father's case from her foster father, the chief. Isung took the case back to court. The people who were in prison back then also testified, including the chief at that time. After a heated debate, the judge finally announced that the evidence against Lee Longyu was insufficient, revoked the original death sentence, and declared Lee Longyu not guilty. Her father's wrongful conviction was finally overturned. Isung burst into tears. The inmates hugged each other excitedly. Isung finally cleared her father's name. At this moment, snowflakes began to fall from the sky again. Isung seemed to see herself and her father in the hot air balloon once more. This time, they were flying freely into the sky. The movie ends here. Miracle in Cell Number 7 Foot is a South Korean drama film directed by Lee Hwan-kyung, starring Ryu Sung-ryong, Park Shin-hye, and Yoon Jin-young. Released in 2013, the film uses this case to convey a profound theme. It inspired people to think about kindness and justice, while also satirizing the absurdity of online law enforcement by the police chief and many unscrupulous journalists. Judicial fairness and the presumption of innocence, even in such a context, made it impossible for Long Jio to receive a fair trial. The dedication and involvement of everyone in Room 7 and the section chief during the second trial seemed to suggest that the truth could be accepted by everyone. But reality is always cruel. The police chief's warning conveyed the familiar plight of the underprivileged, who can only be manipulated by the powerful. In contrast, if the defendant were a person of power, the outcome would be different. Isheng could only clear the injustice, naively believing it would comfort Long Jio's spirit. What we witness is often just the tip of the iceberg. The massive truth beneath is even more overwhelming. The stage of life we face may just be an illusion, with the stories behind the scenes being even more shocking.